conflict. This is actually slightly spurned from a reel that you put up maybe today or yesterday. And the question is what does unhealthy conflict look like? But also there's some nuance in that, because there's ways in which people think they're doing conflict in ways that are healthy that actually have like strands of unhealthiness that are kind of weaved in there. I wonder if we could also get to that.
Yeah, for sure. So it's interesting because I always say conflict is not the problem. Conflict is the symptom for the fact that you either don't express yourself or you express too many things under the form of a projection without taking the time to reflect on what is happening before sharing what we were talking about and what you were sharing at the beginning of our conversation. So conflict is, on a science-based level, it's really pressure that accumulates in the body. But so it's a pressure that comes from not only the argument or the disagreement that we have with our partner, but it's an accumulation of pressure from all the unresolved part of ourselves, the unresolved childhood, teenagehood, the unresolved material of our last relationship. And that pressure is going to seek liberation, especially during the power struggle phase. So unhealthy conflict versus healthy conflict, I would say that unhealthy conflict is only going to be based on projection, denial, rejection, dismissal, all of that. We are not really listening to our partner, we're just trying to be heard. But we think we're trying to be heard, but we are only trying to reinforce our constraint. So, and you will see people, they oftentimes be like, oh, like I'm tired of conflict, like let's stop having conflict. Let's not have conflict anymore. What happens? Another conflict. Because if you say, I don't want another conflict, it's like being in a room and in the door it's written, I don't want. So if you sit in a room of I don't want, you're going to attract what you don't want. That's physics, that's manifestation. So the avoidance the avoidance of the conflict is the very thing that is going to attract the conflict, because the conflict needs to happen to reveal what's creating the conflict in the first place. The conflict cannot be solved at the behavior level. It's like everyone is trying to do that. We're trying to solve it at the content level. But it's only going to be solved at the context level. The context is all of your unresolved thing. So it's like healthy conflict is going to be stepping stone for growth. And a healthy conflict is always going to start by taking responsibility for our part in the conflict. The first act of responsibility we can always do is this one. The perception I have of my partner dictates the quality of the relationship. That's very important for people listening to us here. The perception I have of my partner dictates the quality of the relationship. Now, if I have, for example, a big wound of mistrust, that was something that I had, and I'm starting to create a perception of my partner based on that wound of mistrust, I'm going to think that my partner, when she doesn't reply to the phone, she's cheating on me. And so I'm already created a version of her based on my wounds. And I'm not in a relationship with the reality of who she is. I'm in a relationship with my unresolved material. So when we look at that, then eventually I'm going to start projecting those fear and those concern onto her, thinking that she's going to do what my ex did to me. That's not fair on her. But this is the whole part of this game, is to realize, okay, in what way is the perception I have of my partner is more of the accumulation from the hurt I haven't processed from past relationship? Or is the perception of my partner is anchored in question, curiosity, wanting to understand her, looking at if her words match her, action match her words, just like for me. So how can your history create a story that impacts your relationship? And I would say that, to answer your question, unhealthy conflict will be constantly the byproduct of thinking that my partner can take power away from me. Thinking that even if we have a conflict, the moment we say, I don't have my part in the conflict, that's on you, is the moment we lose. Because it takes two people to have a conflict. It takes one to start, it takes the other one to reinforce it. So the biggest perpetrator of conflict and unhealthy conflict, I would say, is when we are certain that we are not part of the problem that has created the conflict in the first place. Unhealthy conflict also is birthed with an aspect of competition. Conflict is a competition in disguise. One person wants to be right, the other person doesn't want to be wrong. Because again, if we are wrong, that means like, no, if I'm wrong, I can be judged, I can be criticized. For the anxious person, it's like, no, if you see me as wrong, you can leave me. For the avoidant, it's like, no, if you see me as wrong, now I feel like a failure. I feel I'm not good enough. So I would rather leave to stay in an environment when I feel this way. But it's interesting because competition, the biggest competition on the planet are in sports, in appearance, because there's competition in workplace. Sadly, there's a big competition still between men and women, which with all the work that we do, we're trying to dissolve that. It's like, it's not matriarchy or patriarchy. For me, the best one is a synergy, when everyone knows their strength and their roles as they can work together. But so if we look at it, sports, a winning team goes in competition not remembering the losses. The losing team goes in competition with the accumulated pressure from accumulated memories. Now, if we apply that to relationship, the losing team is going to go through the next conflict with an accumulation of pressure from the thing that the resentment, the thing that are not being said, the lies, what have been said that was unfair. The winning team is going to go in competition, discharging and dissolving what is within, and also excelling and expressing the pressure on their own, and then being able to come back because they have already resolved within themselves. And then they can resolve with their partner. But most people, especially men, we're trying to fix and resolve something that is not to fix and resolve in the first place, especially with our women. The first thing is to attend to the emotion and the feelings they have so we can help them reduce the chaos that is internal to their nervous system. And then once we have helped them, brought them back into more a space of neutrality, now we can find solutions and we can move forward. But so I would say this with conflict. Dismissal is a guarantee to exacerbate a conflict, but acceptance and validation and understanding and curiosity could be also a guarantee that the conflict is going to start to dissolve. So dismissal will always escalate a conflict. Validating someone else's experience can start to transform the conflict. But again, there is nuances in that because we don't want to validate the invalidations they do with themselves. So if I keep, for example, validating, or if my partner was to keep validating my own sense of victimhood, she's not doing me any favor, and it's not doing me any favor. So we need to validate someone else's experience, but I wouldn't go into validate someone's victim mentality over and over again. At some point, we need to call it out and say, hey, this happening a few times, we need to find something now. Because I don't like seeing you in that state. You don't like being in that state. Your ego love to be in that state because the ego love to play the victim because there is a payoff to it. But then we need to call this out and be like, hey, this has been happening a couple of times.